He's extremely active in the East Dallas community. He's kind of got his finger in a lot of different things here. So we're excited to have you join us today, Ross. From your bio on your website, it says you're obviously a partner at Bell Nunley who has expertise in complex matters involving trade secrets, contract disputes, high stakes business disputes, non-competes, non-solicitation provisions, and trademark, copyright, and patent infringement, among other things. So I'm sure there's more to list as well, but Ross is here today to provide us with an update on the most recent legislation and how it may impact your business. So I'll let you take it away. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Brad. Hey, y'all. You're going to see me looking up here, and that's because that's where my presentation is that I'm going to screen share with you here in a minute. So it's good to be here with all y'all. I can't see anybody other than Brad and Deborah, but thank y'all for joining in on the lunch presentation here. All right, let me now attempt to share screen. Bear with me. That should be it there.
Deborah, there we go.
Can y'all see that? And do you only see the presentation, or do you also see?
We've got just the presentation.
Outstanding. Okay, great. So here we go. Presentation today is on new state laws that may impact your business. So a little bit about me. I'm the Chamber's legal counsel. That's an elected position. I've been proud to serve in that position for several years now. Brad told you some of this, just generally, the easy way to describe what I do. I got a pretty general commercial practice. If there's a contract and two people that hate each other, that's pretty much what I do. It's kind of wheelhouse for me. And all those more specific things Brad described are kind of fall within that. So about the firm, we're a full service business firm. We've got 65 attorneys, 13 different practice groups, transactional and litigation, all these different areas. And we're proud to get ranked in Chambers USA this year. All right, starting in on a little bit of background about our legislature. So they meet every 2 years for 140 days. The governor can call special sessions if he wants to. It's a bicameral legislature, as most of y'all know. We have a House and a Senate. There's the breakdown. Time is really the scarcest resource, and you'll see folks, use the fact that session is going to come to an end to make all kind of backroom deals. There's a bar, I think it's called the Cloakroom, across the street from the Capitol. My friend in law school, whose dad was a legislator, said that's where all the deals really get done, is in that bar across the street from the Capitol in a basement. All right, there's your big three. So Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, Dade Phelan, and Governor Greg Abbott. Okay, so many described 2021 as they were expecting a perfect storm this year for our legislature to really have a difficult time getting the budget balance. We have a constitutional requirement to have a balanced budget, and we were facing lower revenue from COVID-19. That's what everyone expected. And also our snowmageddon, where we were going to have to do a lot to, pay for this infrastructure weakness that was exposed with our unprecedented freeze that we had. I actually did a pretty good job dealing with these issues from the perspective of getting the budget balanced. So, there's what you had in terms of the expected deficit. It was expected back in July that we would have a $5 billion deficit. In January, that was reduced to expected $1 billion deficit. And then by May of 2021, we had no deficit. So we were able to get a balanced budget passed. We preserved our education funding gains that we got in the last session. So that's great. A lot of people expected a lot of major cuts there, and that didn't happen. And the $248 billion budget that we got passed doesn't include the $16 billion in federal COVID stimulus. That's something that's going to be addressed in a special session that we know will be coming up in the fall. Okay, so talking about legislation, and you know, I tried to. There's many laws that got passed, that some got proposed and didn't pass. I really try to focus in this presentation on laws that may affect your business. That's Chamber of Commerce meeting, so that's what I'm trying to focus on here. And so you'll see all these kind of have an angle as to how it might affect your business. If it doesn't seem like it'd be really apparent to me, if I was in your shoes, how it might affect it, I'll try to address that. And of course, there'll be time for questions at the end. A note about that: I can almost guarantee that someone's going to ask a question I don't know the answer to, maybe multiple people. If that happens, you'll see my contact information at the end. These are new laws. There's lots of information out there that we can tap into. But if you ask a question I can't answer here on the lunch presentation, get in touch with me and I will work to get you an answer to that, to the extent one's available. All right. So Snowmageddon response. You guys have probably read through this as I was sitting here, John, about questions and things like that. But basically, they did do some things to reform ERCOT, reduce the number of members, make sure they live in the state, make sure the legislature can add members so that if they need to pack ERCOT for whatever reason to get stuff done, they can do that. A big one here is they passed a mandate that the plants and utilities have to weatherize. How exactly that's going to get paid for is going to look a little tricky, but basically there's an allowance in there for the issuance of state-backed bonds to pay for it. They also, in the law reforming ERCOT, they put in place a ban on natural gas plants that are shuttered being able to come in and say, hey, we're shuttered, we can't open up even though there's an emergency. That created a problem during the freeze, and there's now a ban on that and some penalties if they try to remain shuttered during declared emergencies. And then there was some effort made to scale back on renewables, but that effort ultimately, those efforts ultimately failed. So you heard some talk during the freeze about, this is all because we have all those windmills out there in West Texas. And then some folks said, no, that's really not why it is. They tried to put some things in to try to cut back on the reliance on those, and didn't happen. All right, priority bills. So there's a whole long list of priority bills that the governor, it's a term of art. That's a priority bill, something that the governor sets out each session. He gives these bills low bill numbers, so that way they're right up at the top of the agenda. Most of those priority bills we won't talk about today because many of them deal with sort of social issues that don't really have a direct or immediate business impact. But I tried to bring in some of them that have more of a that sort of slant to them. So the first, statewide broadband access. This passed. This is a big deal for anybody that spends time out in the country. That there's lots of outlying areas where we don't have we still don't have great service for your phone, for your Wi-Fi, and so forth. So this kind of fulfills that last mile of service, provides some mechanisms for funding, with grants and loans that can make it happen and cover some of those broad areas of the state where service is pretty bad. So, over time, there's now a mandate that we're going to get statewide broadband access in place, and we're going to have that a mechanism to have that paid for. So that's great, for all kinds of reasons. Pandemic Liability Protection Act. So this one's interesting to me because it includes the phrase gross negligence, which we'll talk about. Basically, it's a law that limits when businesses can be sued because someone caught COVID at their facility, got really sick as a result. So that's only allowed now if the business was grossly negligent. I get to now read the law, which is fun. So what that means, Texas law defines gross negligence as an act or omission which, when viewed objectively from the standpoint of the actor at the time of its occurrence, involves an extreme degree of risk considering the probability and magnitude of the potential harm to others, and of which the actor has actual subjective awareness at the time of the act or omission. What all that means is you knew that there was a big risk at the time you did the thing, and you did it anyhow, knowing that people were probably going to get injured as a result. Think about if anybody watches pro wrestling, whenever Jim Ross used to say, "Total disregard for human life," that's basically what it is. So unless you did that, which we could make some arguments if everybody knows kind of COVID and what's going on, but unless you knew that somebody coming in was probably going to get COVID when they came in, and you said no restrictions, everybody can do whatever they want, unless it's that sort of situation, there's some protections in the law for you as of this legislative session. And then the Oil and Gas Protection Act. So this is a really interesting one. So this one, it prevents any state pension or endowment from investing in any company that divests from fossil fuels. This is basically an effort to protect the oil and gas industry, which is big, obviously, here in Texas. The moral of the story there is, if you're invested in fossil fuels and you want those types of investment from state pensions or endowments, don't divest. And if you're not invested, just know that if you decide to invest, you're potentially limiting your ability to get out of it without losing some funding. So that's kind of an interesting protection that they put in place. Okay. Local government overreach bills. I tried to find one that had Sam Houston and a Texas Ranger, but that's what you get. You get one that looks federal, but this is for state local government. All right, so a few things here. So they tried to overturn the Dallas eviction ordinance. That was something that was passed during the pandemic to create an additional layer of notice requirements for landlords that were trying to evict tenants. It was specifically designed to avoid some restrictions in state law and in the Constitution that would prevent such an ordinance, and it did effectively avoid those restrictions. They tried to specifically ban that ordinance, and they failed. That didn't pass the state legislature. But the Dallas County sick leave ordinance was overturned. So there's now this prohibition on local regulation of employee benefits. Cities can't mandate sick leave or other benefits. That's only the state's area now. Then also they put in place a statewide camping ban for unapproved areas. So this came about because Austin repealed its camping ban. There was a large number of homeless folks that were camping on the streets, on the sidewalks, created some issues that folks in Austin weren't particularly happy about. And that is now in place at the state level, that you can't camp in unapproved areas, and cities can't simply opt out of that or discourage enforcement. There's penalties if they do so. So we'll see how that kind of works out as it gets rolled out in areas like here in Dallas, where you have a significant number of folks that camp. Where are those folks going to go? What's going to happen with that? That's something that's all now going to have to be worked out. And then also there was a defund the police ban that passed as well. Okay, social issue bills. There were lots of them. I tried to focus on the ones that had the most immediate and direct impact on business. So the first one is constitutional carry for handgun owners. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail on this one and what it means, because I imagine there's a fair amount of questions, as there usually are, about what does that mean? Where can they carry? Where can't they carry? What are the exceptions and restrictions? All that good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I'm just I pulled up a nice article here. I'm going to read through it, and this little section I'm going to read, it's about 2 paragraphs, and it kind of lays out, I think, answers to a lot of the questions that I would expect folks to have. So I'll go ahead and read through this on the constitutional carry for handgun owners. The new law still prohibits Texans from carrying a firearm in bars, amateur or professional sporting events, prisons, civil commitment facilities, state-run hospitals and nursing facilities, and amusement parks. However, it is now legal for Texans to carry a firearm at public governmental meetings. That should be fun. Similar to existing open and concealed carry laws relating to licensed firearm carriers, the Act also provides Texas business owners the right to prevent members of the public from bringing firearms into their places of business. The law makes it a Class C misdemeanor for individuals to carry a firearm into a business if they have oral or written notice that entry with a firearm is prohibited. And as before, this act provides specific language that you have to post, and there has to be posted specific language, specific size, all those sorts of things. On the employment front, the act does not substantively amend the Texas Labor Code, which allows employers to prohibit an employee from possessing a firearm on their premises. An employer's premises is defined as a building or a portion of a building, but does not include any public or private driveway, street, sidewalk, or walkway, parking lot, parking garage, or other parking area. So basically, you can keep them from having it in the building, but not in the parking lot. The new law also does not affect an employer's immunity from civil liability for injuries or deaths arising out of an occurrence involving a firearm or ammunition that the employer is required to allow on its property, or the presumption that the presence of a firearm does not by itself constitute a failure by the employer to provide a safe workplace. So in other words, if you let somebody on your property with a gun because you have to, and they shoot somebody, there's a protection for you in the law. And also, if you allow people to come onto the premises with a handgun, that by itself does not create an unsafe workplace, according to state law. So moving on, the other social issue bill that I saw that I thought could have, an immediate or direct application to the business community is the casino gambling expansion. That failed, as it has since probably before I was born. They try every year it seems to fail, but I'm sure they'll try again next time. So still no expanded casino gambling in Texas. Okay, agriculture bills. All right, so first one is, what I call the, if you mess with the bull, you get the horns law. It used to be that there was a protection against being sued if you went to a livestock show and you got gored by a bull. That's now been expanded to, injury caused by an animal on a working farm or ranch. So if you go to somebody's working farm or ranch, just be careful around their animals, because if one of them hurts you, you may be barred from suing them. The next one is a ban on labeling veggie meat as meat. This almost passed. It passed the House, but not the Senate, so it didn't become law. But that's just something for our restaurant owners out there to be aware of. There are efforts underway to try to prevent you from labeling veggie meat as meat, for instance, on your menus. And then the other one, which I thought was odd, was in the agriculture area, but it was probably because it crosses so many agriculture areas, was the high-speed rail. So they tried to limit it in different ways. Didn't do it, so that one's full speed ahead. Okay, next one is issues with unemployment due to COVID. So all of our COVID-19 employment-related bills that came up. So as everybody on here probably knows and has heard and has talked about, there's been a worker shortage across the state as we come out of the pandemic. The governor took some action to try to limit or curtail those issues. He's going to end all federal employment assistance starting June 26th. So that's coming right up. It was set to expire in September, but it's going to end sooner in Texas. It's going to end the additional $300 a week benefit, and it's going to prevent the expansion to gig workers and others. The idea here with this action is really just to get folks, back into the workforce. I think we've all heard stories at this point that, there are some folks who were working before the pandemic came up. They're getting these benefits, and they're continuing to get the benefits, and people want them to come back into work, but they're saying, it's not that I'm lazy. I want to work, but at the same time, they're paying me to sit. And so I'm going to sit while they're paying me to do that. This is an effort to get those folks to go back into the workforce because the workplace needs them. Okay. Then other COVID legislation. So this has to do with your vaccine passports. There's a ban now on vaccine passports. Businesses are banned, and this goes into effect in September. But like all of these laws do, effective date is September 1. Businesses are banned now from requiring proof of COVID vaccination. There's a penalty. Violators can't get state contracts and could lose state licenses or operating permits. I know for many, the state contracts, may not be such an issue. There's sort of a certain sector that deals with state contracts, but many different businesses are licensed or permitted through Texas agencies, and so that could be a big problem. Those agencies typically have delegated authority on whether or not the licenses, on what happens with licenses and permits that they issue, and so the law doesn't provide that that their licenses or permits are immediately revoked. It leaves it to the agency that governs those licenses or permits to decide whether or not they will be revoked. But it does give them the power to do that if a vaccine passport is required at that business. There's a statistic for you. Currently, around 50% of Texans have at least one dose of a 2-dose vaccine, and 36.5% have 2. All right, lawsuits. This is the sizzle on the steak right here. This is the part where we get really excited about lawsuit stuff. I'm just joking, but all seriousness, there's a very important law that passed. It relates to lawsuits this legislative session. It had been a problem going all the way back to 2015, actually. Really big issue that prevented a lot of folks from being able to enforce their contracts for just basic things like an unpaid account. I'm a vendor or I'm a supplier. I supply materials to this person. They don't pay me. And now as a practical matter, I can't sue them because I can't recover my attorney's fees. There was a loophole in the attorney's fees recovery provision in state law for LLCs that one of the courts in Texas identified and said, well, technically that law doesn't say LLC, so LLCs aren't covered. And then that expanded throughout the state, and it actually created a pretty big problem for a lot of businesses in enforcing their contracts. So that is now fixed. You can recover attorney's fees against an LLC in a breach of contract case, and that just, it goes back to the way it was pre-2015 across the state, where if you have a contract with somebody, they breach it, you sue them for it, you can seek to recover your attorney's fees. That's a big deal, especially when you're dealing with a contract that may not involve that much money. Okay, next area is Fair Park. And Brad, if I'm taking too long on any of this, please just jump in and let me know to speed up, and I will.
You're doing great.
Great. Okay. So there was a big, I know that's low resolution, and I apologize for that, but this is our, just sort of overview map of Fair Park and all the fun stuff you can do out there. So there was actually a really important bill that came in and got passed this year that they've been trying to do for years, never were able to get it done, and this year finally got passed. That has to do with funding for lots of different areas, but was specifically introduced to help Fair Park. Because a little bit of background out there, we have the issue with there's $330 million in repairs and renovation that need to happen out at Fair Park. And where are you going to get the money for that? There was a state law in place that said you could not use two of the different taxes that are typically used for such improvements. You could not use them for municipal or parkland improvements. So it basically specifically banned using those tax monies to do the kind of stuff that they need to do out at Fair Park. And that left the park seeking to basically hold events for profit and try to use those profits to make the repairs, and also seek funding from private donors to really fund anything above the most basic level of maintenance out at the park. So it's referred to as the Brimer Bill. The reason why it's referred to as that is sort of arcane, so I won't get into it. But here's what it does. It removes a limitation of the Major Event Trust Fund and Reimbursement Program. That's what I was just describing. So Texas law previously prohibited the use of those funds for improvements to municipal or park property. This bill allows the use of up to 2% tax on hotels and up to 5% tax on vehicle rentals for sports and community venue projects on municipal park land. It allows Fair Park to get funds to make improvements to accommodate specific events, but those improvements to accommodate specific events dovetail many times 100% with needed repairs. Keep in mind, for instance, that all the things that we have out there from the Centennial were built for one event, and they've been there since 1936. So under the language that you have, you can make the argument, if we were back in 1936 with this law, that those funds could be used to build all those things that are sitting out there because it was for a specific event and it was an improvement for that. There are many needed repairs, over $330 million worth to those facilities now. This is an opportunity to do that. This is not a new tax. It's just a new use of existing tax money. These taxes were already in place, but they're prohibited from using those monies for this purpose, and now they can. So what's the upshot? Fair Park is probably saved. Why is that significant for the business community? Well, it's right down the street from, East Dallas. Depending on how you draw the map, it's in East Dallas, and it's right there. Grand Avenue literally runs into it, and there's lots of business opportunities and interests that rely on Fair Park and that could develop for our area and for East Dallas if Fair Park was brought up to, be sort of the gem that we all know it can be. And so this is a major development that will allow the funding to hopefully do that. Now, the reason I say probably is because the law includes what I would call a population keyhole that will limit its impact. It basically says this law only applies to certain communities that have between 1.1 and 1.3 million in population. Dallas, as soon as the new census numbers come out or accepted or approved, all those good things and redistricting happens, will have over 1.3 million in population. So this, and this law goes into effect September. So the thinking is that this is essentially going to carve out a short period of funds that will help the park and the current park management to bridge the gap between what they think that they're going to be able to raise or what they have pledged and that total sort of bill or estimate for phase one of the renovations, repairs, and improvements, which is $330 million. Their hope is that this will take them a lot of the way there, if not all the way there, to that final number. But it is limited. It's not a blank check. It doesn't go forever, and it's limited by that sort of population keyhole that they put in place, which I thought was a really unusual way to write a law, but it is there. Okay. And then you have the special session that's coming up in fall. That's the purpose of that is for us to figure out how we're going to spend that remaining $16 billion of COVID stimulus. I heard a report yesterday that Governor Abbott's saying that we're going to build a wall. I didn't hear how he was saying he expected to pay for that. So I don't know if he's expecting to use the stimulus money to fund that or fund part of it. But I have a sneaking suspicion that might have been what he was referring to. So, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Okay, so now's the time for questions. If you have questions, let me know. If I can answer them now, I will. If I can't, I will admit defeat, and you have my contact information there. If you get in contact with me, I will try to find an answer for you. Questions?
Perfect. Thank you, Ross. I saw a couple of questions pop up, but I just wanted to take a second to thank you again for your time today. It was extremely informative, and I definitely did not expect to hear a pro wrestling analogy thrown in there. So always good when you can mix those in. So
try to keep it interesting. I hope everybody out there is still awake.
That's right. That's right. So one of the questions was on the mask mandate. Are businesses still allowed to refuse, I guess, mask and the vaccine passport, are businesses still allowed to refuse entry to anyone not wearing a mask? And if not, how is that different than refusing for not wearing shirt or shoes?
Yes, you're still allowed to refuse entry to somebody not wearing a mask. Um, there's a specific ban on asking them to show proof of vaccine.
Got it.
So there's not any current ban on requesting people wear a mask.
Got it. Perfect. The other question that I saw, and if anybody else has other questions, feel free to chime in. And as Ross mentioned, you can also email us or him, and he can help answer some of these. But was on the constitutional carry initiative, and I think you touched on it. The question was, does this have any impact on the 30.6 30.06 concealed carry or the 30.07 open carry restrictions that businesses can impose on their patrons?
That's a great question. Yet, and it's a little bit of a complicated question. So what I did address it from the portion of this article that I read. Essentially, before you had to post a specific notice. We've got one. I've got it. It's right over there. I can see it from where I'm sitting out in the elevator bay. There's a very specific sign you have to post if you want to restrict, or at least let people know that you're restricting carrying on the business premises. There's going to be a similar sign. Your sign has to strictly comply with what's prescribed by the state to do that still with the constitutional open carry. So if the question is, does the new sign requirements replace the old sign requirements? I don't know the answer to that. So if that's their question, please get in touch with me and I'd be happy to look that up for you. But I do know that there is a specific sign requirement that you would need to use and put into place to restrict folks from engaging in the constitutional open carry.
So it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, then that they have the ability, businesses can still restrict open carry and or concealed carry with proper signage.
That's right. So let me see if I'll read this portion again because I think it might be helpful. It's not that long either. The new law still prohibits Texans from carrying a firearm in bars, amateur or professional sporting events, prisons, civil commitment facilities, state-run hospitals and nursing facilities, and amusement parks. However, it is now legal for Texans to carry a firearm at public governmental meetings. Similar to existing open and concealed carry laws relating to licensed firearm carriers, the Act also provides Texas business owners the right to prevent members of the public from bringing firearms into their places of business. The law makes it a Class C misdemeanor for individuals to carry a firearm into a business if they have oral or written notice that entry with a firearm is prohibited. The Act provides specific language that business owners can use and post to effectuate this notice. So you could tell the person, you could have someone whose job it is to tell the person, but they have to use the exact language and they have to be willing to confront somebody with a gun and tell them that they can't bring it in. So if you post a sign, while the sign is kind of obnoxious looking and the requirements for the size of it are large, at least you don't have to task somebody with that.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Got a few comments that this was extremely helpful. One question, we did bill you as an expert in a lot of different subjects. One question is, what is the meaning of life? From Mr. Cobdish.
Find your gift and share it with others.
There you go. See, I knew you were an expert. We had one last question that came across. Can you expand about the police defunding bill or ban? Was it deemed that cities could not defund?
Essentially, yes. And I don't know a whole lot about that one.
Okay.
I know that's one that I provide a low amount of information on. I debated on whether or not to even include it because I was kind of like, I don't know if it really has a direct impact on business, but I thought, there's enough businesses that could potentially be impacted by a decline in policing, that I'll go ahead and include it. But I'll admit that I don't know a whole lot about that one. If they want to email me, contact information's there. I'd be happy to look into it more for them. I should take this opportunity to tell everyone I'm not your lawyer. And nothing I've said is legal advice. This is just a report on what's come through the state legislature. So please don't take any of this as legal advice. I'm not your lawyer. Just trying to help out.
I think you're supposed to do that at the beginning of the of your speech, right?
You know.
Last question that just came across within the city of Dallas. Have you heard of any legislative changes to make starting a business easier? The amount of paperwork, fees, and time it takes to start is long. Anything that you're aware of within? I know you kind of focused on the most recently passed legislation, but anything that you're aware of in terms of ease of bureaucratic paperwork and nightmare that's involved in starting a business?
No.
Okay, short and sweet.
Sorry.
We've got others with jokes asking about if the Texas Rangers ballpark qualifies as an amateur sports venue. I think that's a sports humor there. So with that, we will. I'm going to thank you again, Ross. You've been extremely helpful and a great sport in answering these questions. If you would like to contact Ross about specific questions, his contact information is up there, and obviously we can get him in touch with you for you. So with that.